Hey everyone, I'm Mike DeLong. Welcome to the Tater Talk podcast, where we explore the fascinating global potato processing industry. We'll share stories and insights about flakes, fries, chips, and crisps, and everything in between. Let's dig in. Today, I'm joined by Matt Price. Matt is the president and CEO of Teton Valley Brands, also a founder of Price and Partner. And Matt can explain to us what those two companies are. But today, we're going to talk a lot about strategy, resilience, what it takes to grow a company, and how that stuff needs to be part of the DNA, and how Matt's applying it to growing Teton Valley Brands. So, Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Oh man, I'm so stoked when I saw I was getting on the Tater podcast. I was like, this is just perfect.
Cool.
Tater Talk.
I was going to ask, so I was going to start, Matt, by just asking you about what is Price and Partner. I know you've got a huge resume working in the venture space and supporting startups. So just a little bit of background. Take us back to what Price and Partner is all about.
To take you back there, I'd have to tell you the whole story.
We got it.
Okay. Once upon a time, I was an ambitious founder, and I was actually building in the wine space. So alcohol. And I moved, I loaded my car and I moved to California from Omaha, Nebraska, with no money to found a company. And I thought when you founded a company, they just gave you the private jet, right? Like I just assumed, there's a salary in it for you. And talk about learning the hard way. Legitimately went homeless 6 months, not homeless in the couch surfing way, homeless as in sneaking into a Winnebago at night. So I definitely learned a lot of these lessons the hard way. Now, good news, the company worked out. It worked out fairly quickly. I moved to New York City, so homeless to living on 56 and First, which that's a transition. And I really wanted to dedicate, I wanted to be the best at that time at investing in early stage startups, really, because I was hooked. And so I started to go around New York City and I just said, hey, I will be an advisor. And everybody was like, well, what are you going to advise me on? And I was like, oh, crap. I'm going to advise you on, the one thing everybody else does is trying to find money, even though at that time I really didn't know how to find money. And over the time, so I just got really good at that. And so over time, not just the money part, but working with startups, I was involved in a couple one that sold for $500 million. And I was also involved in some that, most of them that hit the wall. And what I learned was that the skill sets they teach you at business school, right, aren't necessarily the skill sets that make you successful in startups. And I decided to make my own curriculum for myself. So I learned leadership from SEAL Team 6 guys, organizational psychology, venture, private equity. I went down the line and made sure that I learned enough about each bucket to be able to help founders. So what Price and Partner ended up evolving into was really a consulting CEO role. So it was working with founders who, we didn't necessarily call it that, but that's what it was. That's what it is. And so, Price and Partner was a consulting CEO service that the last two consulting projects I had were both of them turned into acquisitions. So I went out with a bang.
Yeah. Well, you've definitely earned that bang by the sounds of things.
Totally.
Yeah. So now after consulting with a bunch of these different startups and also deploying venture capital in different industries, now you find yourself at the helm of Teton Valley Brands.
Right.
And this is quite different, I imagine, that you'll tell us, from a lot of the other businesses you've worked on in your past. So tell us about how you came to well, first of all, what is Teton Valley Brands,
Sure.
and really what drew you into this space, and how did you get here?
So my wife and I were living in Sun Valley, Idaho, and I was working for a small venture fund up there. And we decided we felt this calling to come to Boise and be catalysts in the CPG ecosystem. We came here with some conviction that we could help, or I could help make this place great. And so, let's see, September in 2019, we moved here. I started working with founders, volunteering, got involved with a local founder on an ice cream business, and really like put up some flags, made sure there was capital, directed capital to the ecosystem. Um, and I met Kyle Nearing in December of 2022.
Kyle
And
was the founder
yeah,
of
sorry.
Teton
Yep. The
Valley.
founder, solo founder of Teton Valley Brands. And at the time, there was a very small operation going on in Nampa. There was, a brand that definitely, had received a little bit of traction. And so, but it was always running on fumes, right? As most of these are. Totally running out of just on fumes to the point where they couldn't take any sort of the next step. And so
And
go ahead.
I guess we forgot to touch on it, Matt, but I should mention, Teton Valley Brands, and is really, it's an incredible brand of Kettle chips,
Yeah,
potato chips,
right.
using real Idaho potatoes. So you saw the brand and you're like, that brand is something very interesting, right?
Very interesting. I mean, if you think about like the Florida orange juice growers, right? And you think about some others that have really branded the area. Yeah, it was
Mm,
super exciting that way. But it was also really exciting because there was a manufacturing component to it. And
right.
it was modest. It was modest, and but I felt like based on past experiences that like you need to have an asset generator. It's hard to just be a brand, right? Because if the brand fails, the company goes away. So having a profit engine inside the company was something I really wanted to get involved in. And what we learned was that there was a serious shortage of manufacturing around this area, right? There was a plant that would burn down, I think, in Hermiston that they chose not to rebuild, and it left this like regional vacuum. Um, so we were like, I was like, I think we have the brand, and I think we know we can tap into that if we want to, and we have.
And so you basically, you met Kyle, you saw the brand, you saw this grow opportunity to, throw some gas on the fire, so to speak. So take us through that transition, like, and how it's been for you as a guy that's been like helping startups for so long in
Mm-hmm.
different industries. Now you're in this manufacturing space where like the buck
Totally.
stops with you,
Of
basically.
which very little experience in this manufacturing space.
Yeah.
Um, it was really about, I don't want to say reorganizing, but, the first thing we did wasn't raise money. The first thing we did was we sat down and we took the strategy apart. And we really looked at what's scalable, what's not. I think, as we capital allocation, even if you don't have much money, is the most important thing. Where do you put gas on which fire? And
Mm,
so the other thing we learned was, manufacturing again was going to be massively important. And so after 6 or 7 months of like really deep strategic work between myself, Kyle, and then Dan Vale, our CFO, we got to a place where we felt like, this now could be a beacon of capital. And another thing I had learned along the way was that the medium and large size farmers, nobody likes risk better than those guys. Um, And so and there was a lot of interest in those farmers being part of like really the value adoption. Like they're on the creation in the product that they, the crop, but none of them really had ventured into retail. And this is where a key ignition point comes in. We got in touch with Ryan Cranny at Cranny Farms.
Mm-hmm.
And we really pitched him on this, this big vision, this dream of bringing Idaho potatoes into chips. There's not one on the market, and that there's essentially a worldwide play here. And Ryan believed, the Cranny Farms board believed. We raised quite a bit of money from them. They've supported the
Mm-hmm.
business and continued to. And then it was kind of, I don't want to say it's off to the races, but at that point, we went and found another facility. We learned as best we could how to put together a great facility on a very low budget. And kind of skipping ahead here, but
That's all right.
we start moving in, and we got hit with everything you can think of. The tariffs. We got a lot of the stuff from China. Like it was a motley crew, right, of putting it together. But what happened was I guess it was last October. It was last October. I looked in the mirror and we looked at our team and said, we need the best VP of operations that we could possibly find. Because today we don't know what good looks like, right? Like we don't, and let alone great. Great could walk into the office and we wouldn't know, right? And so we went ahead and for the first time hired a recruiter. And the recruiter ran us through a process, and lo and behold, we run into a guy named Steve Merrick. And Steve, super accomplished, everything you want in an operations guy. And I convinced him to come work with us. And he became that like massive catalyst to scale. Like, he took the facility over, we threw in all, like, it was just, we got so much traction quickly because of Steve.
I can vouch for that experience with Steve. I've known Steve for over 10 years, and we worked together in both our previous backgrounds, and Steve's a stellar guy.
Yes.
Smart, aggressive, proactive. Yeah. So you hit the gold mine with Steve.
And he's doing a great job of sort of, still playing the startup game, right? Like, that's super difficult for most people, especially coming from, some bigger corporate job, playing the startup game, working off finite resources, having to be uber creative, right? Running into cash flow crunches. Like, that's just not for everybody. And I think he's done a fantastic job of sort of adapting to that sport, which, says a lot about him, just because most people would run for the hills. But he hasn't. He dug in, and we just hired our second shift, so things are progressing nicely. We just ordered our second fryer, so things are filling up.
So, I've heard people say that building your own brand in any consumer food space has got to be like one of the most challenging things to do on earth. So, and brand seems to be extremely important to you and the Teton Valley Brands team. So how do you balance your brand identity with the realities of having to scale a business, scale production, scale the team, scale capacity?
Sure. Well,
Yeah,
you kind
that's
of
a tough one.
encapsulated the highest level of it. Building a brand is not only extremely difficult, it's extremely expensive. And many, 95% of, let's call it product founders follow this playbook of raise money, and focus it on the top line. And the hope is always that it gets bought, right? At some point, the goal is for that to get bought. And having been a part of that model, having benefited greatly and also lost greatly with that model. Like what I wanted to do was be a house of brands that was being underwritten by a profitable manufacturing business. And again, had to get it profitable. There's a lot. That was a pretty big pipe dream. But to look at our business and say we are a house of brands, largely being underwritten, not with investor money, although we have some, but the scalability of the manufacturing process. And that was awesome, but it really turned awesome when we figured out the tallow game.
So tell us more about the tallow game.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess this is about a year and a half ago. I was looking at the situation. I had just taken over the formal CEO role, and I was forecasting in my mind, that we had just raised a bunch of money and we were going to get to a place in 2025 where our revenue might not be caught up with the cash that we were raising. And then I got this inspiration. My wife actually started telling me about tallow, and then a kind of a freak run-in with a gentleman from Snake River Farms at a cocktail party really solidified that they were also super interested in tallow. And so, our first foray into tallow was going to be building and pushing out their, a Snake River branded version of a tallow kettle chip. The first time we put that through the fryer, this is our fryer in Nampa, I think we all looked at each other and said, holy smokes, that's good. It's differentiated at the time. And so, we worked a deal out with Snake River Farms where we own the product, but we pay them for the licensing. And they have all leaned in. Some have became investors. We have adopted a new sales team that they're pushing it out, e-com team. So I think we found a really great partner in Snake River to get us into tallow. But that also, right now we are one of just a handful of manufacturers who will touch tallow. There's all kinds of reasons why people don't want to do this, and we get it. We get it. The supply chain is relatively constrained. The product is messy. Yeah, we understand why people don't do it. But, we're able to do it, both our own business, which we have a brand called Tallow and Stone, which only as of yesterday had a website going national at Sprouts next year. So it just goes to show you, the appetite in the market. And that's actually a tortilla chip, not even a kettle chip. It's a brand we call Tallow and Stone. So
I'll have to check that out. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so tallow becomes this big piece of the puzzle, both margin-wise, both appetite retailer-wise, and so we've lead into it. We've got the Snake River project, and then we've got our Tallow and Stone project, which is scaling faster than I think anyone thought.
Yeah, I mean the presence of these two iconic Idaho brands together is really interesting. And yeah, I'm with you on the differentiation really fueling a lot of growth and reception in the marketplace. I mean, we've got other, unique differentiated products in your space, even in Idaho as well, right? We've got Lad Whalen over at Roots. I'm sure you know those guys quite well, right?
It seems like we do. We've, in my earliest due diligence, and then kind of through my phases of growth here with the company, we've obviously ran into them a bunch, and celebrate. I mean, I cheer for every Idaho CPG company. Don't get me wrong. I truly mean that. But you started to see some similarities. You started to see some packaging that was similar. You started to see, even today, some tallow, pricing that maybe wasn't always the most, what's the best word for it? Most innovative on their side. But
Hmm.
as we continue to see them in the market, yeah, it's actually kind of great because you have a little in-state rivalry, and a rivalry helps everybody.
A healthy rivalry.
Right.
Yeah. And so they're, I mean, he's been really focused on, avocado oil and his regenerative farming, and it's a
Hmm.
different form of differentiation, to you guys. Now, you and I have talked, and I've talked to, um, Steve as well about how important partnerships are with you guys. I mean,
Sure.
Latin Roots aren't technically a partner, but this partnership with Cranny that you mentioned, partnership with Snake River Farms. Um, how important will partnerships like those or others be to the ongoing growth of Teton Valley or any CPG opportunity,
Yeah.
when it comes to food?
Well, it goes back to the reason why we moved here, which was to really try to ignite and get a ecosystem going. And there was a lot of pieces of trying to build a great ecosystem that you needed, but you needed capital, right? You needed a high standard for companies and capital, and individual investors aren't always the best source of that.
Hmm.
So the whole Teton Valley project was to bring together Idaho farmers and Idaho companies to build an Idaho legacy brand. It really is, and so far we've done a good job of doing that. And to be fair, the market, the Snake Rivers, the AgriBeefs, the Crannies, have really been partners in that with us. Um, very much so. Not just capital wise, but we're vertically integrated with Cranny Farms on our potatoes. Like it just they all seemed like this was that idea that they wanted to get excited about. And we have all three of us leaned into it hard, and we've also found that there's a ton of scale to this.
By scale, you mean, you're talking like nationwide reach,
Well, even
potentially
worldwide, we're learning that even
worldwide.
worldwide,
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
you've got we have the Idaho Potato Commission here. That's their sole mandate is to obviously market Idaho consumer products. And so while we're not taking a swing at worldwide yet, um, yeah, we are. They again, whether it's capital, whether it's knowledge, whether it's ecosystem, everybody has leaned in, and we've all seen that there is an opportunity to grow large brands. There's an opportunity to educate people about the Idaho market, and not just the potatoes, but the rivers and the streams and the mountains. Tell those stories nationally and someday hopefully worldwide. And then there's the capital opportunity, which goes along with all of those things working. And so we really took this and kind of pieced it together in a way where it became something everybody wanted to be involved in.
Very cool. Very cool. That really helps attract new partners and new
Mm-hmm.
strategic alliances along the way as well. Not just the capital, but
It's
those brand
never just
alliances.
about the capital, right?
Yeah.
But also it is.
Yes.
Like
Yes. Well,
you
yeah.
need,
I mean, it's in a capital intensive business. Any food manufacturing, especially potatoes, is is a capital intensive business. And it sounds like you're finding ways to improve your margin by these unique
yep,
differentiators, right? But certainly like the commodity potato chip margins are, I'm
small.
sure you'll have learned that they're kind of tight.
They're pretty tight.
Yeah.
Honestly, for us, and whether it's a fad or a trend, just tallow has really been a big driver for us because our margin profile went through the roof on these products,
Yeah.
and allowed
Yeah.
us to start manufacturing, even for other people at a high margin. So all of a sudden, we were handed this gift of margin, both on our branded side and on a co-manufacturing side. So it's allowed us to, underwrite the growth.
Very cool. Well, I have no doubt that you guys are on a really strong path to get there. So congrats to you and the team and to and the success that you guys have had recently at different retailers and your now national launch soon. It speaks volumes to what you guys have built. All right, Matt, this has been great. Thanks so much for spending some time with us, and we'll be in touch.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, subscribe so you don't miss future shows, and of course, share it with a friend. And please leave us a review or rating. Your feedback really helps us bring you the best possible potato content. Be sure to check out the Tater Talk podcast YouTube channel and other social platforms. To learn more about me and how I help potato processors grow their business, check me out on LinkedIn or at www.projexconsultants.com. That's PROJEX consultants.com. So, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon, but until then, eat more fries.